Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live once again in the pale moonlight of Mackey Arena, where it is inordinately warm. An hour and a half or so, however long it's been after a basketball game. I'm wondering if the place is on fire. It's so hot in here. It's probably in the 70s. Before we get going on our wrap video, following Purdue's 83-78 double overtime win over Minnesota, a quick note of thanks to Jason. He stopped to let me out of the media section to get down to the press conference. I told him I would shout him out. Probably not personally important to him, but I wanted to make good on my promise. I also wanted to use this as an opportunity for a little bit of a public service announcement. Those of you coming down the steps when we are trying to get out of the media section who stop and let us out, you are truly the best among us. I cannot say that, cannot emphasize that enough. That is so profoundly appreciated. Because what you have is you have ultimate leverage over sports writers at their most disheveled and consequently at their most vulnerable. We are scrambling like fools, laptops in hand, flailing around to get to a post-game press conference. Me, especially in a hurry because I have to get this thing set up. This is our new microphone. Apparently, audio from press conferences is important to some of you people, so we bought this thing, which my cat thinks is like a vole or a shrew or something and wants to attack every time he sees it. We don't let him. But we are in a tremendous hurry. We are stressed out. We are disheveled. And we appreciate it profoundly when you let us step in front of you on the steps. This was far and away my most pleasant encounter with a Purdue fan on the steps in Mackey Arena of the season. And yes, there is precedent for that. Anyway, Purdue beats Minnesota 83-78, double overtime. Obviously a huge win for Purdue. The way it unfolded, this would have been a really, really unwelcome loss, considering it would put you 1-2 in the Big Ten. You would have already dropped a home game, setting you a little bit further behind the eight ball after you've already lost to arguably the worst team in the Big Ten in Nebraska. Really would have put Purdue in a tough spot from a number of perspectives. One, Purdue wants to compete in the Big Ten, obviously, this season as the reigning champion. A very different team, obviously, but the reigning champion nonetheless. And the NCAA tournament. No guarantee on that. Purdue's got to play its way into the NCAA tournament this season, and losing home games to middle-of-the-pack Big Ten teams is not the way to do it. So when Purdue is up 6 in double overtime, you have to win that game. You have to win that game on your home floor. And Purdue did everything it had to do that after it had really done everything wrong, after it had a 6-point lead there. So a good gut check, I guess you'd say, if we want to add some cliches to this, some tropes, if you will, that sports writers talk about after games. This was a gut check, I guess. A must-win gut check, medal testing time, I guess. Why did it happen? Obviously, Purdue is pretty good. Time has shown this season, and obviously this game went to double overtime. It went 40%, 20% longer than it was supposed to. I'm going to try to make this 20% shorter, make the wrap video 20% shorter to accommodate. It's not going well. Purdue is really good when it makes threes. That's been pretty evident all season long. This game was the Texas game all over again through regulation. Sasha Stefanovic is hot early, gets Purdue off to a good start. Purdue makes enough threes to have a lead for the most part. Lead gets away. The other team's best guard makes a bunch of plays down the stretch, puts the opposition in a position to win, and it just turned out differently. But for 40 minutes, this was the Texas game all over again. But the Texas game's not close at the end if Sasha Stefanovic isn't red hot to begin the game. And that is what Stefanovic has been this season in Mackey Arena. This was the fourth time where he has gone absolutely berserk, from three-point range. And I think it is enormous for this team to have that guy, because this is going to be a defensive-minded team, a team that has to win with defense, is probably going to have to win lower-scoring games as opposed to higher-scoring games, obviously. And to have a guy who can make 3 in a row, 3 out of 4, whatever it might be, and really change the dynamic of a game in a 60-point game, 2 threes is 10% of your point output. You'd like to, score in the 70s and 80s. I don't know if this team has that sort of offensive upside, and that's where in a game like this you worry about them down the stretch, that can they be good enough on offense to make the plays they need to make. But having a shot maker like Stefanovic, who shoots the way he does in this building especially, it's just a game changer for this team. But, as good as Stefanovic was, Purdue's strength really, really showed up in this game. Matt Harms was brilliant in this game. Travion Williams was really, really good as well. And both of those guys, three of the best big men in the Big Ten were all in this game. And for those guys to go head-to-head with Daniel Arturo, who's a pro, potentially an NBA player sooner rather than later, and get the best of him, that was pretty significant to me. But especially for Matt Harms, who is a guy who, is really good, really, really good. Is he that guy who's going to outplay a pro on most nights? This was a great opportunity to do it, and he didn't outscore Daniel Arturo, but his team won, and he had 26 and 9. His tip-in was enormous on the Aaron Wheeler 3 in overtime. Travion Williams made some really, really big plays as well. The pass to Stefanovic was, I'll have to go back and watch it, but kind of real time, it seemed almost savant-like. He's an outstanding passer, but the awareness in that situation for Travion Williams, because prior to the offensive rebound, Purdue's playing for a 2 there, too. They don't need the 3. But for Travion Williams to not go back up with that ball when Purdue could still have used a 2 and find Stefanovic, gives him a chance to get back to the three-point line, hits him right in his shooter's pocket, as they say. Just a brilliant basketball play by Travion Williams in a really big moment. And then for him to make, obviously, he didn't make 2 to win the game in that one instance in the free throw line. I'm totally confused as to what happened and when. My game story might be completely wrong. I don't know. Everything runs together in games like this. This was the post-Virginia game paralysis I was experiencing it again tonight. You can't remember what happened and when. But for Travion Williams to make the free throw to tie the game after he'd missed the first, so the pressure on that second one was enormous. And then in the second overtime, he makes 2 of 2 at the line to help Purdue make sure that this wasn't going to get away. Just really, really big moments for a player who struggled at the foul line, but really big moments in general for both of Purdue's big guys. Obviously, the combination thereof is the concentration of strength at Purdue. Everybody talks about leading scorers and whatnot. Well, Purdue's leading scorer essentially is the combination of those two guys. I know Jihad Proctor technically is their leading scorer. Whether he is still, I don't know. After tonight, that is. But Purdue's leading scorer, Purdue's go-to guy, essentially, is the combination of those two guys. And that's a little bit been the fly in the ointment for Purdue from an offensive perspective, too, is that those guys are reliant on everybody around them to get them the ball, to get them involved. And Purdue's turnover at guard, it's been a process. The people around the big guys to get them, to leverage them as best they can. I thought you saw a great entry-man game from Aaron Wheeler tonight. I think there was a turnover in the second half. But prior to that, he'd done a really good job in that high-low action, getting the ball inside to whichever big guy he was playing with. I think it was a little bit of both, but he did a really nice job in that sense. Probably more Matt Harms because of the way the rotations were for Purdue. But both of Purdue's big guys were really good. The people around them who need to help them be really good, helped them be really good. And it's what Purdue needs to do from here on out as often as possible with these games. Ride the guys who are your best players. And that is Matt Harms and that is Travion Williams. And those guys carried Purdue to a win tonight against another really, really high-level big guy. And that can't help but underscore to them and everyone else how important they are and how involved they have to be and how good they should view themselves as being and how that should, I guess, affect how they carry themselves in games, how they conduct themselves, whatever it may be. But the reality of all of this, too, is as good as Stefanovic was, as good as the shooting was, as good as the big guys were, as good as the supporting cast was, Eric Hunter made some big shots as well. Purdue won this game with defense. Purdue won this game by getting every stop they had to get when they had to get it. And they won it because Nojel Eastern took out the player who put Minnesota in position to win this game. And that is what Purdue has in Nojel Eastern, is a guy who can erase a player, a perimeter player for the most part. If he didn't get called for 3, I'm not complaining about the refs guy. I know how that comes off when somebody covers a team and calls go against their team, but those were 3 really, really soft fouls when Eastern essentially blocked Marcus Carr's three, but Marcus Carr exploded and got the call. That was, I thought that was borderline at best. I thought the play where Eastern gets called for a bump foul and then they warn Carr for flopping. What are we doing here? It doesn't make any sense. But I thought if Eastern hadn't got those fouls pinned on him, maybe they could have gone to him a little more often on Carr, perhaps maybe earlier when he was really roasting Purdue off the dribble. You have that player. It's tough because when he's basically starting at the 4, you're almost wasting him guarding a guy who doesn't require the sort of defensive attention some other guys do, because the guy he's guarding, because he's the 4, you have no one else you can put on him. You really couldn't take Sasha Stefanovic and put him on Demir, whatever his name is, Alahan Demir, because he's like 6'9", 235, and you can't ask Sasha Stefanovic credibly to guard him around the rim. But that's what Purdue has in No-Gel Eastern, and it'll be interesting to see if they keep up with these lineups, figuring out ways to best maximize his defensive potential, as well, as opposed to having him guard the position where maybe he's technically playing. But Eric Hunter's had a really good season for Purdue defensively. This might not have been his best second half from a defensive perspective, but he's had a really good defensive season, and he's made it possible where they could use No-Gel Eastern in a variety of different places too. And I think that'll be really big come Sunday at Illinois, where you have a lot of bases to cover defensively in their backcourt with Io and with Frazier. There was a time not all that long ago where if you had 2 guards you had to worry about, you only had one guy, whether it was Rafael Davis, Dakota Mathias, whoever it might be, where you could really trust to guard them. Purdue has a couple of them now, and that's a really nice luxury to have. And another building block to this team that can be really good defensively, and has to be, because it has to win with defense. That's got to be its thing. And, even though Purdue scores a cosmetic 83 in this game because they played 10 extra minutes, got a bunch of free throws there at the end, this is a team that is not going to roll over people offensively. It is going to have to do this. It's going to have to grind wins out. It's going to have to defend. It's going to have to rebound. It's going to have to hustle. All of those cliches that people talk about Purdue basketball, all that stuff that this place prides itself on playing with. This team needs to do it. And here, you would like to have held on to leads again. You would like to have done a better job on Marcus Carr when he was taking over the game, and not been in the positions you were in. But to be in the positions you were in and win that game anyway seems like a springboard of sorts for this team. From an intangibles perspective, in terms of its makeup, what it's capable of doing with its quote-unquote back to the wall. It's ass against the wrecking machine, as David Lee Roth once famously said. Is it back or is it ASS? I can't remember. Anyway, I've only heard that song 10 million times in my life, and I don't know the lyrics. Anyway, that's what I got. I'm going to go get out of here now. For Golden Black, it's Brian Neubert from goldenblack.com, following Purdue's 83-78 double overtime win over Minnesota. We'll talk to you again Sunday from Illinois. A really, really big challenge for Purdue, I think, from a style of play perspective. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And thank you again, Jason. Much appreciated. Thanks, everybody.